number of people who turned over hundreds of pages of original material, emails, texts, interview notes, internal reports, documenting an astonishing saga of sex, lies, and betrayal at the highest levels of a major corporation. At CBS, the hashtag #MeToo movement had collided explosively with the corporate boardroom. Moonves was the first chief executive of a major publicly traded company forced to resign for predatory sexual conduct. The much smaller Weinstein Company was privately owned. And Moonves wasn't just any chief executive. As a leading media and entertainment company with a vaunted news division, CBS had an outsized influence on American politics and culture. Under Moonves's leadership, the CBS network had gone from last to first place in the ratings and stayed there for over 10 years. CBS stock had more than doubled in price. The Hollywood Reporter named Moonves the most powerful person in entertainment. He had earned over $700 million during his tenure, making him one of the highest-paid chief executives in the country. For all his power and influence, Moonves still reported to a board of directors with the power to hire, fire, or otherwise discipline or reward him. At CBS, members of the board included a former Secretary of Defense, a former head of the NAACP, the former dean of Harvard Law School, and an Academy Award-winning film producer. But they could be replaced by a controlling shareholder that exercised 80% of the shareholders' voting rights. That controlling shareholder was National Amusements Incorporated, a movie theater chain and holding company for a media empire assembled by the 95-year-old and increasingly infirm Sumner Redstone. Sumner owned Viacom, the entertainment company that included Paramount Pictures and cable channels MTV, Comedy Central, and Nickelodeon, and CBS. In recent years, he had largely ceded control to his 64-year-old daughter, Sherry Redstone, who was vice chair of both the CBS and Viacom boards and might, or might not, be his heir apparent. Sherry Redstone was in many ways an unwilling participant, dragged into the drama because her father's increasingly erratic and bizarre behavior threatened his family's fortune and legacy, everything he'd spent decades building. She was largely unversed in the ways of Hollywood, unprepared for the all-male bastion and deep-seated gender stereotypes that greeted her, and repeatedly underestimated, especially by her own father. Moonves and his allies found Sherry's attempts to assert herself and play a role in running CBS to be intolerable. Just months before he was forced to resign, Moonves had declared war on the Redstone family by seeking to strip them of their voting power. One of the mysteries we confronted was why Moonves would have unleashed a corporate civil war knowing, as he did, that his predatory sexual past was at great and imminent risk of being publicly revealed. Of course, the great media moguls from Louis B. Mayer, Adolph Zukor, Ted Turner, John Malone, Rupert Murdoch, and Redstone himself had never worried about such issues. They were all white men whose power and authority went unquestioned, no matter how unbridled their outbursts of temper or insensitive or even bigoted their treatment of women and minorities. Their boards of directors, charged with protecting all shareholders, were little more than window dressing for their autocratic control. Sumner boasted that the Viacom board had never defied his wishes. In their world, sexual indiscretions were as routine as deals cut on the 18th tee at the Bel Air Country Club. Though hardly confined to the business of media and entertainment, the notion of the casting couch, sex in return for a job or a part, got its name in Hollywood. Rumors about Harvey Weinstein, the head of Miramax and then the Weinstein Company, had circulated for years without getting in the way of his many Academy Awards. If anything, it was the women who bore the brunt of the criticism, the bimbos using sex to extort something from powerful men. The veteran Hollywood producer and CBS board member